Welcome back to another episode of How Much Would Your Favorite Anime Weapon Actually Cost? And today we're looking at the weapon of Ainz Ooal Gown, Overlord of Death. And to be more specific, we're looking at the staff of Ainz Ooal Gown. Now, if you haven't seen one of my videos before, then I'm going to quickly explain who I am and what I do. In this series, I'm going to be explaining how much anime weapons would both cost to make and how much it would cost to have a professional make them. I am a professional knife maker of 9 years, and I have done several commissions, and I'm using the skills that I use to make my commissions in appraising, basically, how much these weapons would cost. And of course, if you've ever seen Overlord, you've seen the staff of Ainz Ooal Gown. Perhaps you don't realize what it is, but it is the staff that he carries in this scene here and in several other scenes, and he uses it when he walks around as the king. Before I really start, though, I do have to explain that since this staff is magical in nature, I can't fully accurately appraise it because in this real world we don't have magic, so I have no clue what that would be valued at. But I can use real world principles. For instance, since Ainz Ooal Gown is the guild master, he would have access to their funds, so that staff is most likely made of gold. And the stones in each snake's mouth in this scene are probably priceless gemstones. In fact, that's what I'm going to base this all off of. So I'm using real world principles, but I'm going to ignore most of the magic stuff because obviously I can't really equate that to anything in the real world. Whereas the staff being made of gold, I can make a price for that. Alright, to begin, we're going to talk about the gold. Gold spot price as of this recording right now, live, it is $3,763.20 to buy 1 ounce of gold. That is a lot of money. And if you haven't noticed, the staff of Ainz Ooal Gown is obviously pretty dang tall. I would assume that Ainz Ooal Gown himself is about 6 foot. So that makes the staff pretty freaking tall. But let's go ahead and find out how tall the staff really is. According to Google, there's actually 2 different heights that Ainz Ooal Gown appears to be. In the light novel, he's 5'10" canonically. But in the anime, he's closer to about 6'7". I've already calculated this. And before I realized this, I calculated. So I calculated as he's 6'7". But you can recalculate it for 5'10" because of the light novels. But I'm going to choose not to, because I think him being taller and having a more overbearing presence is a little bit cooler. It seems like he would be taller than just an average person. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that and calculate as I have already done. But feel free to, in the comments, show me what it would be if he were actually 5'10". Alright, as you can see here from my sophisticated methods of calculating how tall he is, since I know he's 6'7", and I can just take from that, divide that into 6-foot increments, which I have here, then divide that 6 into 1-foot increments, and 6 inches and 3-inch increments. And I can take all those measurements and determine how big this staff is. Now, from the very top of it to the very bottom, in this image, it is 6 foot tall. You gotta consider, though, in other scenes, it does change from scene to scene. So, it is an anime. It's gonna have some odd parts like that, where the size changes based on what scenes. So we're gonna mostly ignore that, and I'm gonna use the size based on this image. But it does change here and there, so this isn't a perfect reference. But I generally do have the size now. So now I know how much gold this would take, realistically. So I can scale this up in a 3D modeling software. Now for this portion of it, for the calculation of how much the gold would cost, I actually did cheat a little bit. I used an online 3D model that I found, which was the staff, and I put it into a volume calculator, a 3D volume calculator, and it calculated the internal volume for me, so I didn't have to do all the effort of figuring out this odd shapes volume. And then I took that volume and I threw it into the current price of gold at the time, which I did calculate this a little bit before I recorded this, so it has fluxed since then. But I calculated if it were pure gold, it would be $8.15 million, which is an insane amount of gold. I mean, that is wild to think about that that's even possible. But then you have to consider if you're smithing something with gold. Gold is a very soft material, so you can't exactly make things out of pure gold, not realistically. And in many scenes, you see him slamming this thing into the ground to demand silence from the rest of them. And it just wouldn't hold up to that kind of abuse if it actually were pure gold. So I'm going to assume it's something more like 18 karat gold. Something still very regal and good. It's solid. It's gold, but not quite pure. But it's still good quality gold. It's nothing like 10 karat or lower where it's not gold. Now that we've got the price of the gold down, we can go ahead and find out how much these gemstones are going to cost. So first of all, they're precious gemstones, obviously. Again, I'm assuming that this is a regal staff. You know, he is the guild leader after all. He's gonna have the best of the best. So these are all, I'm going to assume, some sort of precious gemstones, or at least expensive, good quality gemstones. So if we refer back to my old sizing chart, we can see that if we take these measurements down, I know it's going to be a little bit blurry for you. Sorry about that. I couldn't get it any higher quality, unfortunately. But you can see here roughly that it says 1.5 inches around diameter for most of these balls. Now, if you think about it, that's pretty big for a gemstone. In fact, that's 0.1 inch under the size of a golf ball. So that's a big gemstone. So I put that measurement into a calculator to see how big carat-wise that would be for different stones. And I got the measurements that I then calculated this with. So let's start with the ruby. Obviously, the ruby is the first red one that you see on this top of the staff in the snake's mouth. Now that ruby, I found one that was 1 carat on the website gemsnai.com. And they have a 1 carat quadruple A quality, which is one of the highest quality gemstones you could buy, for $9,244, just 1 carat. Now, of course, I can't actually find these gigantic freaking gemstones. Like, I'm not going to be able to find these anywhere. So, I'm going to have to base most of my calculations off of 1 carat, and then I multiply it up to the necessary carats. Now, let's go ahead and calculate how big around this ball actually is, because I did already write it down, but I've actually lost that measurement. So we can go ahead and do it now. So we're going to use this website here. And obviously you can see it's got the different stones, the different cuts, all sorts of fun stuff. So while we're calculating this, I am actually going to be using a cabochon cut. Now, I know that isn't a ball, but if you take 2 cabochons, round cabochons, and you glue them together, that's going to be pretty close to a ball, and then I'll just add a carat or 2 to make sure that I have any excess. So it's not going to be a perfect calculation, but it's as close as I can get it because they just don't facet gemstones like this into perfect golf balls, you know? Now here's where I'm going to be mostly using Google because I don't know the specific gravity of most of these gemstones, and as you can see, this calculator does require that. So I'm going to go ahead and just assume that Google knows best. In fact, I'm even going to use the AI overview, which I normally wouldn't do, but it says here that the specific gravity is somewhere around 4. So I'm going to go ahead and input 4 into this calculator and see what it gives us as far as the carat size. Alright, it's saying that the carats here would be 597.31 carat. That's how big that gemstone would be in carats. And if we see here that the ruby is $9,244 per carat, that would make this around $5.5 million. Which, I mean, just the ruby alone is already an insane price. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to go through and calculate the rest of these because obviously I'm not going to sit here and explain every single one of them. The process is the exact same. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick time lapse of me calculating all of them. Alright, now that we have all of them calculated, we can go ahead and calculate how much it would actually cost to make this thing. Because, obviously, we're already at a lot of money here. So let's go ahead and see how much that would cost to make. So the cost on this piece would actually be $28 million, or to be more specific, $28.71 million. Which I don't think there are very many craftsmen would go so far as to make something that would cost quite this much. I mean, maybe back in like ancient Egypt, they would make it for a freaking pharaoh, but this isn't. This is obviously not gonna be a normal commission. This is an insane cost on one single project. But we gotta also figure out how much would it cost to buy it as, like the person who was having it made. So I estimated roughly that it would take me about 60 hours to make something like this. Now that's of course with buying all the gemstones. I don't facet gemstones. I can, I choose not to. So I would be buying all these gemstones faceted the way I need them. So that's just making basically the gold frame and all that fun stuff and then putting it all together. And I would estimate 60 hours of production time is a pretty good amount of time, which means that my price to make this would be about $1.05 billion. I would make this for $1.05 billion. Now, granted, that is an insane jump, but you have to consider the risk involved in all of this. I mean, the risk involved in buying and making the stuff with gold and how much gold you might have to waste and how much gemstones, you might fasten this one into the actual snake's mouth and then it break or something like that. So this is also considering, okay, I'm going to need a little bit extra parts and a little bit of a fallback in case something does go wrong. And then, of course, 60 hours of production time is not a short amount of time. And that is an unusually long project. So I think that price is warranted. Of course, no one's ever going to buy something quite that expensive. I mean, that's that's crazy. So that's how much his staff would cost. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the like and subscribe. If you want to see more of these, let me know in the comments. And if you have an anime that maybe I haven't touched on yet, or one that you want to see in the future, just shoot it down in the comments and let me know. Thanks for watching.